Elizabeth Montgomery was an enigma, an actress who lived a life full of secrets, scandal, and tragedy. She was a Hollywood icon, adored by millions for her role as Samantha Stevens in the hit TV series Bewitched. But behind the scenes, her life was far from the perfect existence that her on-screen character portrayed. From her enchanting beginnings to the trials and tribulations of her Hollywood career, you'll be left stunned by the secrets and scandals that plagued this legendary actress. Elizabeth was born in 1933 to wealthy parents Robert and Elizabeth Montgomery. On the surface, their life seemed perfect. They had money, status, and a beautiful home in Los Angeles. But behind closed doors, Elizabeth's childhood was filled with fear and pain and sadness. Robert Montgomery was a Hollywood star and an alcoholic. He was often absent from the family home, leaving Elizabeth and her mother to fend for themselves. But when he was around, he was abusive, both physically and emotionally. He would lash out at Elizabeth and her mother, leaving them bruised and broken. Elizabeth's mother was no better. She suffered from severe depression and was often unable to take care of her daughter. As a result, Elizabeth was left to navigate the dangerous and confusing world of Hollywood on her own. She was constantly surrounded by drugs and alcohol and sex, all before she had even reached her teenage years. Despite the chaos and pain of her childhood, Elizabeth was determined to succeed. She began acting at a young age, appearing in commercials and small roles on television. Her talent was undeniable, but her past trauma haunted her every step of the way. As Elizabeth's career began to take off, she found herself in a constant battle with her demons. She struggled with addiction, depression, and anxiety, all a result of her childhood trauma. But she never gave up. She continued to work tirelessly, determined to make a name for herself in Hollywood. And in so doing, she easily became the victim of sexual harassment at the hands of some of the most powerful men in Hollywood. She suffered in silence, too afraid to speak out against her abusers for fear of retaliation or ruining her career. It all began when Montgomery was just starting out in the industry. As a young and naive actress, she was often subjected to unwanted advances and lewd comments from male executives and co-stars. She tried to brush it off, thinking it was just part of the job, but the harassment only grew worse as time went on. One of her most egregious abusers was a powerful producer who had promised to help further her career. Instead, he used his position of authority to coerce her into sexual acts, threatening to blacklist her if she refused. Montgomery felt trapped and alone, unable to speak out against the man who held her future in his hands. But he was not the only one. Montgomery had also been harassed by several of her co-stars on Bewitched, including one who had reportedly groped her on set. She had reported the incidents to the show's producers, but they had turned a blind eye, more concerned with keeping the show's ratings high than protecting their star. As the years went on, Montgomery became increasingly disillusioned with the industry she had once loved. The constant harassment had taken a toll on her mental health, and she struggled to find the strength to keep going. But despite it all, she never gave up. She continued to fight for her rights as a woman and as an actress, refusing to let the men who had hurt her win. It wasn't until decades later, after Montgomery's death in 1995, that the full extent of her harassment was revealed. In her personal diaries, she documented the abuse she had suffered at the hands of her abusers, detailing the pain and trauma she had endured for so many years. The shocking truth about Elizabeth Montgomery's sexual harassment rocked the entertainment industry to its core. It was a stark reminder of the toxic culture that still pervades Hollywood at the time, and the importance of speaking out against abuse and harassment. But Elizabeth's life was plagued with more than just the trauma of abuse. The legendary actress, who captured the hearts of millions with her bewitching smile and charming persona, led a life shrouded in mystery and sorrow. Despite her success on the screen, her personal life was a far cry from the fairy tale she portrayed on the small screen. The world was captivated by her charm and beauty. Her smile and grace was second to none, and her talent was undeniable. But behind the glitz and glamour of Hollywood lies a tragic tale of heartbreak, betrayal, and shattered dreams, and some of these were due to her rough marital journey. Her first marriage to Frederick Gallatin Kamen was a union of two young hearts, madly in love, but the fairy tale was short-lived as Frederick died in a plane crash just 3 years into their marriage. The pain and loss was unbearable for Elizabeth, who turned to alcohol to numb her sorrows. Her second marriage to William Asher, a successful director, brought her fame and fortune. It was an alluring wedding, a union that promised love, joy, and happiness. Their love was the stuff of legends, a whirlwind romance that captured the hearts of millions. But behind the smiles and the public displays of affection lay a dark truth that would shake their marriage to its core. William Asher was a man of many vices, a serial philanderer who couldn't keep his hands off other women. Elizabeth Montgomery, on the other hand, was a devoted wife who believed in the sanctity of marriage. She loved her husband with all her heart and was willing to do whatever it takes to make their marriage work. But as time passed, William's infidelity became too much to bear, and Elizabeth was forced to confront the truth. William was also a controlling and abusive husband who often physically and emotionally abused her. Elizabeth tried to escape the pain by throwing herself into her work, but even that could not ease the pain of her broken heart. The marriage eventually ended in divorce, leaving Elizabeth devastated and emotionally scarred. Her third marriage to Gig Young, an actor, was even more disastrous. He was a chronic alcoholic who often abused Elizabeth and even tried to kill her during one of his drunken rages. Elizabeth was left with no choice but to file for divorce and end the toxic relationship. But the most shocking and heartbreaking marriage of all was her fourth and final one to Robert Foxworth. Elizabeth thought she had finally found true love, but fate had other plans. Robert was diagnosed with cancer just a few years into their marriage, and Elizabeth was forced to watch helplessly as her beloved husband slowly succumbed to the disease. The pain and heartache of losing Robert were too much for Elizabeth, but she had to accept it. In the 1960s, Elizabeth landed the role that would make her a household name, Samantha in Bewitched. The show was a huge success, but behind the scenes, Elizabeth was still struggling. She was exhausted, both physically and mentally, and her addiction to alcohol and prescription drugs was spiraling out of control. While she dazzled audiences with her talent and beauty, she struggled with a deep and debilitating depression that threatened to consume her. All her life, she kept this hidden from the public eye, afraid of the judgment and stigma that would come with mental illness. But it's not only her mental health she was battling with. Elizabeth Montgomery was also battling shocking and untold health issues. She had been diagnosed with colon cancer, a disease that slowly crept through her body, sapping her of her strength and vitality. But Elizabeth was a fighter, a woman of strength and courage who refused to let her illness define her. Her struggle with the disease was so intense, but she never gave up, never lost hope, even as her body began to fail her. She fought with every ounce of her being, enduring the painful treatments and the endless cycles of chemotherapy throughout. She lived with it, although she painfully lost the battle to the disease. But that was not the only health issue she dealt with. The truth about Elizabeth was a facade that hid the true extent of her pain from the world. She smiled through her sufferings, masking her agony with a veneer of happiness that was so convincing it fooled even her closest friends and family. Her sufferings were a secret she kept until the very end, a hidden truth that only emerged after her untimely death at the age of 62. It was then that the world learned the shocking extent of her illness, the true depth of her pain and suffering. The news sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, leaving fans and colleagues reeling in disbelief. How could this vibrant, talented woman have been suffering so much, and yet no one knew? The truth was, Elizabeth had been fighting a battle that was too hard to win, a war that no one could have won, no matter how strong or brave they were. The legacy of Elizabeth Montgomery lives on even in death. She was a woman of immense talent, a gifted actress who brought joy and laughter to millions. But her story is also a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the brightest stars can be consumed by the darkness that lurks within. If you enjoy this video, you'll definitely enjoy the next one showing on your screen right now. Click away and I will see you on the next.